Good morning, everybody. My name is Jody. My husband David John and I have a small farm in the panhandle of North Idaho. These are our stories and adventures, so welcome to Moose Flats Farm. And today we're out in the garden. We're going to go through how to plant your tomatoes, how to plant onion sets, and hopefully get some cucumbers seeds in the ground. So let's look at how I have everything laid out. So on each cattle panel I am going to plant 12 tomato plants. They're going to be about a foot apart. The cattle panel is about 16 inches above the ground, so once they reach that height we'll start heavily pruning and getting them tied up. So on tomatoes, the really cool thing about them is all the way up and down on their stalk there's these really fine hairs that if they come into contact with the ground will develop roots. So you're going to want to dig your hole as deep as possible, and you will trim all your lower leaves because you don't want to bury the leaves in the ground. It can just cause disease. So going to go through and get this one side planted. And one of the channels I follow, old farmer had told her to plant an egg with your tomatoes, and it makes sense because the tomatoes will absorb the calcium around from the eggshell. Make sure you crack it so you don't have a bomb when you go to clean out your garden beds. So I've been doing this and it really helps. So, and plus I have extra eggs that I need to work through, so it's a good way to help get rid of some eggs. And after I get this all planted, I will go over and cover it with some shavings just to keep the weeds down. Okay, that's about as deep as I can get that guy. So we're just gonna test measure, and I'll get a couple inches into the ground. Egg. Go through and backfill and press the soil down around the roots. And because these guys are you're not able to see where I'm at now. And because these ones are tall enough to already be tied to the cattle panel, I'm going to use these reusable zip ties this year. And it doesn't have to be snug, just enough to hold them to the panel itself. So that gets this bed of tomatoes cleaned up and like on. Get you guys so you can see. This tomato right here. You see how right here there's a second plant coming up, just because you don't want to top your tomatoes, especially indeterminate ones, because they'll just stop growing. You'd have to let a sucker go to get a leader. But I don't want 2 leaders on this plant. I just want the one. So just going to trim it out of the armpit. And I could take this and stick it in water, and it would grow roots up and down the stem and replant it. But I have enough tomatoes, so I don't need to do that. And it would be an exact clone of this Kellogg's breakfast. So about a month or 2 back, this feed came along on my algorithm, and it was called The Best Way to Grow Your Onion Sets. So I was like, okay, I'll click on it and see what he says. And he did the experiment where he just grew his onions just in a plot by themselves. He did some where they were growing with his tomatoes, and he said that he got the biggest onions from the ones that he grew underneath his tomato plants, because they take about the same watering requirements, and the onions are going to be shallow rooted where the tomatoes are deep rooted, so they're not competing for water. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to plant my onions underneath or with the tomatoes. And then I've also got some marigolds that I'm going to plant in here. 1, because they're pretty, and 2, they help keep the bad insects away from my tomato plants. And the onions, it's like this bed is going to be the white onions. And I've got my tag so I remember what onions I planted here. And they're planted about 1 inch deep. Oh, reading the wrong one. It says plant the onion sets 3 inches apart and about 1 inch deep. So I think I can get I'll probably do 3 onion sets in the rows by the tomatoes. So I'm going to get these guys planted. And because the soil is nice and loose, I'm I don't have to dig a hole, I can just plop the onion in. And as you see, they are ready to be planted. So, I've never had good luck growing cucumbers. Last year, when I planted my cucumbers in the rose bed, I put this cage around them, and it was the best I've ever done on cucumbers. So, I'm going to do at the end of this bed some National Pickling Cucumber. The seeds are planted about 1/2 inch deep, and it says 4 to 6 feet apart. But I'm going to put like 3 or 4 seeds in here, and this bed will just need to be watered in and it's planted. And I do have the edge of the soaker hose just looped right around here, so I am going to be planting them basically right along the edge of the soaker hose. So now all I have to do is go grab the hose, get this watered in, and get the other 2 rows done, but one started. So I've gone through and gotten this bed planted, or at least under the cattle panel, with the marigolds, tomatoes, and onions, and this one. And did anybody catch the mistake I made on the first bed? Yeah, you should plant your marigolds and your tomatoes and then go back and place your onion sets in, because when I was planting the marigolds, I didn't have any idea where I had planted the onions. So when I went through on the second 2 beds, I got everything planted, and then I went back and did the onions. But on the ends here, where my yellow trumpet vine is, I did plant evening primrose and some canary bells. And same on this side with the honeysuckle. Got your canary bell, or your morning primrose, and or evening primrose and canary bells, with a couple marigolds in the back of it. So now I just have to go through and make some cages for the cucumbers and really decide what else I'm going to be planting in here, because I've got this open space up at the end, and then the open spaces on the ends of those 2 beds, and the 3 raised beds. So I'm gonna get the water moved over here and at least get these guys started to water in and get the little cage things put together. Good morning, everybody. Last I left you because I was going to do the box wire rounds for the trailing cucumbers, and then I got squirreled into weeding the garlic area and pruning the roses, and then it started to sprinkle, and I did go through and get the rest of these beds planted with seeds. I'll show you what the tomatoes and the marigolds look like and what seeds we got planted. So I've got cucumber in the little box wire trellis there. I did leave that potato, but I planted dill here. And over on this side is a pickling bush cucumber. And because that one is a bushy one, I'm not going to worry about getting a support for it. But over here in this one is an amazing pickling cucumber, but the tomatoes and marigolds look really good on this trellis. In this one I planted cilantro, have a sunflower coming up, and some more cucumbers there. I did plant a couple zucchini plants here, the butter dish, along with the cucumbers. Got to get some mini roses planted there. Have some other squash and a little cosmos coming up there. Those tomatoes are all looking good. Same with these ones here. And in this last bed over here is some more zucchini, the butter stick, little cosmos. And I did transplant the canary bells and the blank evening primrose in these two beds. And my trumpet vine is taking off amazing. But as far as the rose bed, I did get my new rose planted. And all the roses are looking really good now that they're cleaned up. But isn't that rose pretty? And the climbing rose looks so good. And I did get the Malabar spinach seeds planted. But over here in the corn bed, as you can see, all the corn is coming up. The couple little sunflowers and a potato I missed. In this long bed here, I've planted the dark green zucchini, and I do have a pea that I did not plant and a runner bean coming up. Got a couple runner beans coming up here, and I planted the early straight neck zucchini in here. Need to get out here and get these brassicas trimmed back. Got a couple runner beans popping up along this trellis. Planted more summer squash in here. But I gotta show you these happy little pansies, but get an angle that the sun's not shining in your eyes. So under the shade bed that's just taking off and nice and full. I had pansies in it last year, and now they're down here on the ground. The little volunteer columbines. Strawberries that have runnered and are filling in themselves. That is a mass of columbine starts. So let's go to the deck of the seed shed and I'll show you something else I started from seed. Was actually going, it's never going to come up, it's never going to come up. But I got one coming up, so there's hope for the rest of them. Since the pumpkins and everything don't really like to have their roots disturbed, I did plant them in peat pots so I can plant them straight in the ground. And I've got a couple coming up. Those are the jack-o'-lanterns. So hopefully in the next day or two they'll be really popping up and we'll be able to get them planted. But over here in the bed underneath the willow that I'd planted with the irises, and I just threw a bunch of the columbine seeds from the garden. The columbine seeds finally started to germinate all throughout here. I'm going to have one iris that's going to bloom. So that bed should look really, really pretty once the columbines get bigger and start to bloom. Well guys, this is where I'm going to end today's video. I hope you have a good day and a good week. And actually the very end of this video, Sultan, our 10-month-old peacock, is very, very camera shy. But I was able to get him doing his peacock stuff, and he was actually showing off for a squirrel that he's been playing with. You don't get to see the squirrel. Totally missed that part of the interaction, but gonna end with Sultan being a pretty boy, so I'll talk to you guys on the next video. Bye for now.